The goal of consent is not to ask for permission. Okay, it's to make sure that everyone is having a good time. The gold standard for sex is not amazing orgasms, is not the medal for the most advanced position. It's did everyone have a fucking good time? That's it. That's the standard. And when we talk about consent, I think we get it confused because it's always taught really in the context of how to avoid harm. But when we flip it on its head, what we're really talking about is how to create the safety that sets the stage for trust at a body, nervous system, energetic level that creates better sex, that creates that deep, profound, touch the sky orgasm we are all aiming for or have heard about and wonder why we can't achieve. Welcome to the Sex After Kids podcast, a place for parents to come and learn together about the sometimes bumpy road back into the saddle of their sex life after adoption, childbirth, or joining a blended family. I am your host, Sophia Ashley, certified sex educator and sex coach, mother and stepmother, and your totally TMI guide to becoming BFFs with your body and initiating easy, connected, and confident, naked, sexy fun times. Here we are, one part science of sex, one part mindfulness magic, and one part straight up real talk to help you find the spark in your relationship and yourself after kids. I am so glad you are here. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Sex After Kids podcast. Today, we are talking about something that might feel a little uncomfortable at first, but it is one of the most powerful, healing, and dare I say, sexy conversations that we can have when we know how to do it right. If you haven't noticed, we have been chatting a bit about duty sex here and on Instagram, and I want to take it a step further and talk about the C word in long-term relationships. And by the C word, I mean consent. Most of you listening never got the consent lessons that I deliver in high school regularly right now. And when we talk about consent, it's often in the context of a one-night stand or a new relationship. But what about when you're 10 years deep and 3 kids in? Still just as relevant, still just as important to having the sex life you want to have, but we don't practice it in the same way. Now, stay with me because this isn't just about the heavy stuff today. It is also about fun, it's about safety, and ultimately about better orgasms and more pleasurable play in the bedroom. Because consent, like real embodied enthusiastic consent, permission, whatever you want to call it, isn't the buzzkill we all think about it as. It is really the rocket fuel for good sex. And if you're avoiding sex and not sure why, if your partner is shrinking away from your touch, or if you just want to have even better sex than the sex you're having right now, this episode is for you. And we're going to talk tangible tools at the end. So stick around. Let's start at the beginning, class. Consent is what? It is the art of asking for or giving permission for any kind of touch or sexual connection. And why do we care about this? We care about it because every human has what we call bodily autonomy. And what that means is that your body is yours and you get to decide what happens to it. You don't owe anyone your body. You don't owe anyone sex, not even your spouse, not even if you used to have sex 3 times a week, not even if you haven't had it in 6 months. The goal of consent is not to ask for permission. Okay, it's to make sure that everyone is having a good time. The gold standard for sex is not amazing orgasms, is not the medal for the most advanced position. It's did everyone have a fucking good time? That's it. That's the standard. And when we talk about consent, I think we get it confused because it's always taught really in the context of how to avoid harm. But when we flip it on its head, what we're really talking about is how to create the safety that sets the stage for trust at a body, nervous system, energetic level that creates better sex, that creates that deep, profound, touch the sky orgasm we are all aiming for or have heard about and wonder why we can't achieve. Okay. What we're talking about essentially is everyone having naked fun, and consent has 3 key ingredients. The first is that it is ongoing. So a yes yesterday is not a yes today. A yes 5 minutes ago can turn into a no midway through. This is about an ongoing conversation where we are checking in with ourselves and with our partner about if we're enjoying what's happening and if we want something else. Okay? So it is an ongoing conversation, not a one and done thing. 2, it is enthusiastic. A sure, I guess, isn't consent. A stick it in me and get it over with isn't consent. If someone is going along with it but not really into it, that is not a yes. And when we're in long-term relationships, and we're going to talk about this more in a bit, duty sex, maintenance sex, the kind of expectations we have for sex often fall into this less than enthusiastic is okay. Now, there's some fine lines here, because if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I am a proponent of embracing the maybe, but that is different than forcing ourselves. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Okay. So true consent is ongoing. I can say no or change my mind at any time. It is enthusiastic and ideally verbal. Yes, I want to do that with you. And the third piece is that it is voluntary. If someone feels guilted, if someone feels pressured, if someone feels obligated or manipulated into saying yes, then that is not consent. And if they're passed out or intoxicated, that's not consent either. Okay. Pretty simple when we think about it, but harder to navigate when we've been with someone for a long time. Still important to note, the hard truth is that if one of these pieces is missing, we have left consent territory. And at best, we are dealing with what I would call unconsensual sex. And at worst, we are talking about coercion, assault, and even rape. Rape happens in long-term relationships and marriages. This needs to be said. Assault happens in long-term relationships and marriages. And unconsensual sex by otherwise well-meaning parties happens a lot in long-term relationships and marriages. Part of because of some of the traps that we fall into the longer that we've been with somebody. So what I want to do in this episode, now that we've done a little refresh on your high school 101 consent, is to explore why we fall into some of these traps of unconsensual sex when we've been with somebody for a very long time, what the impact of that is and how it's contributing to your low libido, and what to do about it. Both as the person who's asking for sex and both as the person who's most often turning it down. How do we navigate this so we're not inadvertently stepping into some of the negative byproducts of not getting ongoing and enthusiastic and voluntary consent? Okay, there's nuance here. There's no black and white in my view. I'm going to pause. So there's nuance in this conversation, and I just invite you to keep ears open as we dive into it, because it's so important and there's answers here. If you are wanting to create more nervous system safety for your partner, this is important. If they have trauma that you caused or didn't cause, this is important. If you have trauma that you're trying to navigate, this is important. And if you just want to have better sex, this is important. Before we dive into things today, I do want to say, one, if you are experiencing coercion, manipulation, or sexualized violence in your relationship, or if you're not sure if the things you're experiencing fall into these categories, but it's feeling off, I need you to know that you are not alone. There are resources available to support you. I will list some crisis lines and organizations in the show notes, and you can always reach out to me. And if you are someone, particularly a dad or a male partner, who's listening to this and who's realizing with a bit of a sinking feeling that you might have crossed lines or ignored signals or acted a bit entitled sometimes, here is what I need you to hear, okay? Your guilt and your shame that you are feeling right now are not helpful. Okay. I don't want you to shame spiral. I don't want you to guilt spiral about this. I do want you to be okay with the fact that it might hurt and it might sting a little to hear that. And it might hurt and it might sting a little to look in the mirror and see yourself in some of this. And if you shame spiral and guilt spiral, you will stay stuck there and you will stay stuck in the pattern that you're stuck in. What I invite from you is your willingness to hear this, to sit with the sting of it, to talk about it with someone. Maybe that's me, maybe that's your therapist, maybe that's a friend, and to get the skills to do differently. You can change this, okay? You are not the worst thing you've ever done. You've inherited a lot of toxic beliefs about sex from our society, but those inheritances don't get to be excuses. They are reasons, not excuses. And this is your moment to choose to do differently moving forward. And I am 100% your champion for doing that, okay? All right. Now that we have those pieces over with, let's talk about why it's so easy to bypass the rules of consent in a long-term relationship. I mean, it sounds simple enough, right? Get permission, make sure that it's ongoing, make sure that people are excited about things, and make sure they really want to. But so many of us default to feeling like asking for consent is robotic, awkward, or really stiff, especially in a long-term relationship. And that creates these traps that we fall into. So let's break down each of the 3 rules of consent and look at some of the ways that we sidestep those and what the impacts are when we are in an LTR or a long-term relationship. So the first piece is the ongoing part, right? Consent needs to be ongoing and kind of like repeat it, right? It's fresh and new each time. And one of the things that happens is that we get so familiar with our loves that it can almost feel like an insult to us to think that we should have to ask permission before we touch them day to day to day to day. And I want you to think about the common reaction, certainly that I see when people talk about using some of these rules with our kids. What do you mean I have to ask my toddler before I hug him? Like, he's my toddler. He came out of my body. I should be able to just pick him up. And while I'm not arguing you need to ask every single fucking time, I would argue that teaching your child that his body is his own is starting to find organic and soft ways to casually ask before you touch and assume that that's what they want. And you can play all kinds of little games to do that. But we also do it with our partners, right? When you have seen a baby come out of your partner's vagina, or when you watch them clip their toenails on the regular, like, what's the big deal with a little walk by shoulder rub? Or what's the harm in an unsolicited and like playful ass grab during a hug? It can almost feel like asking for permission will create a block or like stilt intimacy. But instead, I really need you to think about it in the sense that asking for that permission actually deepens intimacy and trust. Not only does it deepen it between ourselves, but it teaches our partner to get back in touch with themselves, to ask themselves what that yes or no is. And if you've got a partner who's been through trauma, and most of your female partners have been through trauma, your non-bi partners, your racialized partners, and really all of us have a habit of self-abandonment. When you ask for permission and you insist on a true answer and you're okay with whatever that answer is, you are helping your partner get past self-abandonment patterns into deeper trust with themselves, which allows them to get into deeper trust with you. This is super deep shit, and I could nerd out about it forever. But I just want you to remember, like when we've got access to the goodies all the time, it's almost like there was a contract in our marriage that our bodies became each other's, that we just got blanket permission to touch each other all the time. But it's not part of the deal. It's not on the dotted line. My body is mine and your body is yours. And when I am navigating all the shifts in my body that come from kids, sometimes touch that used to feel good and safe and welcome from you, my partner, doesn't anymore. And we have to rewrite the rules. And that starts with me getting back in touch with myself and deciding what feels good now. We need to get intentional about our consent again until we find a new rhythm that works for us. Like imagine, you rewind back to the early days of a relationship where like consent is really in play and there's the excitement of not knowing if you have the permission to do the thing and testing and finding those nonverbal cues and those verbal cues for expressing that you have an interest in like touching the small of their back or making out with them or getting naked. And now it's like you've done it so many times, you skip over that part, but that part is equally important now than it ever was, especially with all the changes after kids, and especially if you've hit a time where you're struggling in your sex life for whatever reason. Starting here will pave the way for everything to get better. It's a dance, okay? We're keeping the goal in mind. We are not asking for permission, even though that's at the heart of what we're doing. We are making sure that our touch is a joyful and pleasurable experience for our partner because we're not in their body. We don't know how it feels. It's about learning how to read the room, right? If you guys are good at doing, if you're good where you're at, if the touch is fluid and no one's uncomfortable, like keep doing what you're doing. But if you're not sure if you're good, if you don't know how your partner's really responding to your touch, or you can tell that they are shrinking away, stepping back, avoiding you, avoiding touching you, then you might want to explore where you're at with this. And I'm going to talk about how to hit a bit of a reset button at the end of the episode. So stay tuned for that. Okay. All right. We could go on there, but those are some of the basics. The next piece is enthusiastic, right? What are some of the traps that we fall into around getting less than enthusiastic consent when it comes to navigating sex after kids in a long-term relationship? And I think this is one of the biggest ones where things get really sticky. And that for me is because, and I'm here advocating all the time, that there is a messy middle between an absolute fuck yes and an absolute fuck no. And are you forcing yourself? Are you overriding your needs when you invite yourself to transition from a maybe I don't want to maybe I could? I want people to be playing more in this maybe zone, but almost the key to success of that are the rules of consent, right? So I can't play in the maybe zone if I don't have an ability to land in my body and feel, am I a yes, no, or a maybe, right? That's the first thing I have to be able to do. And my body has to trust that I'm going to respect the yes, no, or maybe. And then I got to know tools that work for me that respectfully encourage my maybe to turn into a yes without pressuring it or forcing it to turn into a yes, right? Not every maybe becomes a yes, but oftentimes it becomes a yes. We have to be careful in this space because it's very easy to use coercion on our partner. So, like guilt, manipulation, to turn that maybe into a yes, right? Like we see them going, maybe I could. And then it becomes, well, we haven't fucked for 2 weeks. Or if you really love me, you just do it this once or whatever. I really need this. Can become that coercive and manipulative piece, but also we can do it to ourselves, right? We can end up stuck in our head. We can't read the full yes or the full no. We're stuck in this maybe zone. But the invitation isn't, this could be fun. Maybe I'll try to relax a bit before I get started. It's, I should really, because he's been such a great partner and I haven't fucked him in 3 weeks, 3 months, however long it's been. So those coercive and manipulative voices can come from your own brain or they can come from your partner. And coercion and manipulation, if that invitation to a yes comes from that place, That is not consent, my friends. Duty sex lives in this less than enthusiastic space, and so does maintenance sex. And if we only had sex ever on the days that we were 100% absolutely for sure that we 1000% wanted to have sex, we would be waiting an eternity. So how do we navigate this, right? A few quick little steps here, sort of like goalposts that I want you to kind of be watching for. First, like I said, is to get really good at listening to your body. Get really good at telling the difference between a yes, a maybe, and a full no in your body, not your brain. Not all the voices that are yelling at you for the reasons you should and the reasons you shouldn't. Just, do I want to? And I'll share a practice you can try at the end of this episode. And this is a key skill that we practice in the Naked Fun Comeback program. Second is to change the question. So there's a difference between, do you want to have sex right now and do you want to make out right now? Or can I massage your back right now? Or do you want to just connect right now? Sometimes my body is a no to, do you want to have sex right now? But it is a yes to, could we get naked and have a massage with no pressure? So sometimes if I change the question, if I change what I am saying yes or no to, I can maybe say yes to something that's along the path to sex, which we'll maybe get there and we'll maybe won't, without having to say yes to sex full blown all the way right now. The last piece here is to get really good at watching your partner's cues. So if they don't seem 100% in, you're allowed to be the person who says that out loud. You don't seem 100% into this, or you seem torn, or you seem like you want to, but you're not sure, right? And then you want to get good at supporting them to walk through the steps I just talked about, inviting them to breathe, close their eyes, and ask themselves if they want to, or if what they would be into, what they could say yes to right now. And it could be as simple as, instead of saying, you want to have sex, you want to get laid, you want to get naked, I would really like to connect with you right now. What is your body craving or asking for or open to in this moment? And then you have to be totally okay with the answer. And when we get really good at being okay with the answer, when she says, I just want to hold hands and be on the couch, or I'd love to go do massages, but I don't want it to go any further. Or when he says, I'd like to make out, but just for like 20 minutes and then I'm really tired and I want to go to bed. When we get really good at just enjoying fully the thing our partner said yes to, and letting go of the expectation or frustration or disappointment of not going further, their body starts to build that trust with us, that when it has decided what it wants, it's going to be respected and heard. And that creates the body level, nervous system, safety level trust that we need to open up into those deeper things. And when we get really good at this, we change the whole game. Lastly, we have the voluntary piece, right? So we've talked about ongoing and how we sort of just feel like we own our partner's bodies in some ways. We've talked about the enthusiastic piece and how we need to get really good at knowing the difference between coercing ourselves out of a no or out of a maybe and into a yes, and like encouraging and inviting ourselves into a yes. And then the last piece is a voluntary. And so I want us to remember, like, consent violations happen in both directions. And I actually read a lot of stories on Reddit about men in, so-called dead bedrooms who will be complaining that their partner has no libido. And then all of a sudden he'll wake up in the middle of the night and his partner's on him, full on having intercourse with him. And he feels violated, used, hurt, and very disconnected from his partner. And I also hear stories of women in particular who feel pressured, guilted, and manipulated into having sex. And neither of these scenarios is okay, right? If a person feels off, uncomfortable, or not good about what happened, whether they're the person who asked for sex or whether they're the person who said yes or no to sex, something has been off in the consent equation. And we need to name it and acknowledge it and do differently. It is also really important to talk about and acknowledge that we're not just bypassed by our partners. And I don't know really how to describe this other than to say that consent for me has two levels or layers. If I don't trust right? If my body, think of it this way, if my vagina is a person, right? If my vagina tells me she's up for getting fingered today, but not for intercourse, or she tells me that that one area hurts and my partner needs to go slower, and I don't say it, I have bypassed and abandoned her if I personify her into a being. If she says no and I hear her no and I voice that no to my partner, I have built trust with myself, with her. True consent needs to start with my own ability to connect with my body and hear it and honor what it's asked for. And in the Naked Fun Comeback, I teach a very simple practice for getting really good at this called the 10 spot check-in. The second layer of that is, right, once I hear myself, once I get brave to say the thing, then my partner has to hear and respect the limit that I had without coercing or bypassing or manipulating me to convince me out of it. And I need both levels of trust with myself and trust with my partner to have the deepest level of trust possible to really enjoy sex. Because if I'm self-abandoning while saying yes to him, my body is not so much mad at him as it is mad at me. Like I have been the one who coerced myself there. And what that looks like is when your partner has not even opened their mouth other than to ask for sex. And you didn't even give them the chance to respond to your no because your brain said things for him. Your brain said he's going to have a blow up, which maybe he will from past experience and maybe he won't. Your brain says you owe it to him. You're not being a good wife. Like all those judgmental, negative thoughts, which usually come from our conditioning. And so you could force yourself to have sex, like coerce yourself into sex without your partner having had anything to do with it at all. And your partner can also have a lot to do with why you're saying those things to yourself based on previous experiences that you've had with him or with other people, or he may have nothing to do with it, right? So it's kind of this double-edged sword of where is the responsibility, right? Do you need to stop coercing yourself, or do you need to ask your partner to stop coercing and manipulating you? Or is it both? I have been trying to get better at letting my partner know that I've got an argument going on in my head right now. So to sort of verbalize for him what my internal state is like. I like that you're hugging and touching me, and I'm annoyed because we're late for swimming lessons. And this helps him to understand my inner world and also helps him to understand how to initiate and navigate touch with me in a way that's not going to trigger my nervous system. So, if you are in a pattern of this ask and avoid dance as the partner who's looking for sex more often, I really want you to look at the ways that what you say and how you react when you hear a no or a maybe is putting pressure on your partner, maybe in ways that you don't realize. As the avoiding partner, I want you to really look at what pressure your partner's putting at you, but also at what pressure you are putting on yourself that does not come from your partner. Learning how to hear our own bodies and their yeses and nos, learning how to voice it out loud, and learning how to hear rejection with grace and to negotiate respectfully without manipulating someone is the key to consent. If our body does not trust us to listen to us, it will be hard to add that added layer of trusting our partner, right? And when we self abandon, when we don't hear ourselves, and this lack of consent within ourselves can lead to a lot of challenges in our sex life. So, if any of this is ringing true, if you are caught in the entitlement to your partner's body trap, if you have whined to get sex, if you have forced yourself to do it to keep the peace or because you thought that your partner wanted you to, you have options, is what I want you to take away from this, okay? If you are not in a safe or respect if you are not safe or respected in your relationship, if opening up a conversation about these pieces, about how you don't want to have your boobs and your butt and your body grabbed, is met with a fuck you or I'm allowed to do that or whatever, you get to decide if this is a relationship you feel safe in and that you want to stay in. And there's a lot of pros and cons to that, and there's a lot to navigate there, right? And like I mentioned before, there are some support options in the show notes for you if you need help processing that. And if you are with an otherwise great person and you've both haven't been really good at playing by the rules of consent, then I just want you to know that it's never too late to learn and to unlock the next level of trust and pleasure in your relationship as a result. So I have a few quick tools, suggestions before we close today. These are all games and tools and exercises that we dive deep into in my Naked Fun Comeback Signature program for parents. And I'm actually also working on a special program just for dads who are feeling stuck. They don't know how to touch their partner anymore. They don't know how to initiate anymore. The conversation around sex has been beaten to death and they need to do something different. I've got kind of a 30-day reset for you that implements a lot of the things that we've been talking about in this program. So if you think you're there and you are ready to reset, then just email me the word reset and I'll send you the details and you can let me know what you think. So, a couple of things that you can practice. The first is to play what I call the permission game. So, this is just to practice your consent muscle. And you can do this in super low risk situations. If you have kids, this is perfect. You can practice it in your play with them. And you're also, bonus, teaching and role modeling consent to them and teaching them bodily autonomy. An easy example of that is I try, at least 5 hugs out of 10 to ask my kiddo before I go right in for the hug. Can I give you a hug right now? Or I love you so much, I just want to snuggle you. Is that okay? Or I'll look at him and I'll go, can I kiss you right here? And he's like, oh, yeah. Or if we're in the middle of tickling and I'm hearing him go, but he's still laughing and having a good time, I'll hit the pause button and I'll go, you look like you're having fun, but you're saying no. Do you want me to keep going? And he'll say yes. And I'll go, awesome. Or he'll say no. And I'll say, cool, let's do something else. Those are really low pressure ways of practicing, but I want you to notice, even in my description of what I said there, that I get way more connection and joy out of the touch with my son from asking that permission. We turned me kissing his face from a mindless me just smooching him and grabbing him to like this super intimate eye contact game of like where we're going to kiss each other on the face. And it's so beautiful. And he constantly wants to kiss my lips. And I have a rule about that. My lips are just for dad. And we get to practice me saying no and me holding that limit and him dealing with, okay, I'm not allowed to kiss that part of mom's face, but I can kiss her here and here and here and here. Okay. Same thing with your partner. So instead of just going up to your partner to rub their arms or their shoulders because they look like they've had a hard day, you can either take that microsecond to ask, and it could be something like, you look really stressed out. Would a 10-second back rub help you out right now? Or I missed you so much today. I just really love a big hug. It can look like offering something like, I just want to touch you right now. Could I rub your feet? Or would a back rub feel nice? Doing things in a low pressure way where like getting a no is not going to be a big deal is a way to practice. Okay. And when you're on the receiving end, what I want you to practice is tuning into your own body. So don't just automatically say yes or no. If your partner offers you a foot rub, like take a second to pause and go, do I want a foot rub right now? And then don't let your brain answer. Let your body answer. And maybe your body will go, oh, fuck yes. Or maybe your body will go, you know what? My hands really want a massage instead. And practice deliberately setting limits and saying that no, or negotiating and counter offering. Okay. Another way you can practice this is with a massage. And so if you do like a hand or a foot massage in a non-sexy area, you just take turns giving and receiving that massage. And you take turns communicating way the fuck more than you've ever been used to. Right? And so you could ask like, how would you like me to touch your foot? Or do you want, firm pressure or light pressure? Can I touch your big toe? Can I touch your small toe? And you just get really good at asking when you're not going to get hurt if the answer is, actually, like my baby toe really wants some love. You can leave my arch alone. Okay. And the person who's receiving the touch can offer a lot of feedback on two things: what feels good and what you want more of. Okay. Notice how communication ties hugely in here, and nervous system. Okay. We're working with both of these pieces. These are two of my 4 key ingredients to having a great sex life after kids. So the last piece here is to ask outside of the bedroom. And what I mean by that is to talk about consent when you're not naked. That could look like debriefing a previous scenario. So, hey, last week, do you remember when we made love? I actually wasn't totally sure if you were a full yes. And I'd love to hear how that felt for you and how we could, what we could experiment with to make it, more enthusiastic for you. Or you could talk in general and be like, hey, man, I was listening to this episode. Like, my partner asked me a very brave and vulnerable question the other day when I was ranting to him about duty sex and all the things I was posting about. And he was like, does that happen for us? And we had a really good conversation about it and about the times it has happened and how it happens. And I am very guilty of coercing myself, very much so. But the more my partner is hearing that dynamic and knowing what's at play for me, the more he can help me to intervene in that and not be party to it, but help me to interrupt that pattern. So you can explore, and I would definitely encourage you, like, if you know this is a pattern, your partner knows this is a pattern too. And if you can get brave enough to say it out loud and say, hey, I know this has been happening for us during sex, and I know it hasn't felt good for me, and I know it hasn't felt good for you, and we need, like, let's change this. Let's talk about how we can play with some of the games above. Or like, call me. Let's have a reset roadmap call. That's a free call with me. We talk about what your next steps are. Tell me you've listened to this episode and you want a path out, and we will figure it out for you. But getting brave enough to interrupt the pattern and say, we all know, let's name the elephant. We all know this has been happening and we don't want it to happen anymore. What is it going to take to get out of this is the first step forward. I hope that has given you so much food for thought and so many aha moments and some things that you can take home and experiment with. My final thoughts here really is, like, consent is not a barrier to connection. It is the gateway for it. It builds deep trust. It's this micro level of trust on a nervous system level that allows your partner's body to fully relax into being able to have fun with this. And if you want a great sex life, you need to be able to create safety for your partner. Both of you need to do that. And if your partner has any kind of trauma around sex, or if you're in a pattern, right? If your partner's hesitant to initiate now with you because he's gotten rejected so many times, or they've gotten rejected so many times, that's not a trauma, but it creates a nervous system contraction that there's not safety there for them. And we have to switch that dynamic. Consent does not kill the vibe, it creates it. That's what I want you to take away today. If you need support, if you want to debrief what we've talked about today, please know I am here. You can find me in the DMs on IG. You can email me and go, oh my gosh, Sophia, like, let's hop on a call. Let's chat about it. Some of this work can be really triggering, but we have to be willing to look at the patterns that are not helping us, the patterns that have got us in a negative feedback loop where bad experiences beget bad experiences, beget bad experiences, knowing that we can interrupt that and flip it so that small good experiences beget bigger good experiences, beget amazing sex at the end of the road. Thank you for being here. Please like, comment, share, follow. Make sure that we spread the word to as many mamas and papas as we can. And I will see you next time on the Sex After Kids podcast. Mwah. This is the part where we do the end bit, right? My friends, let's take a mindfulness minute here. Take a deep breath in. Open that mouth and let out a big, deep, full body sigh. Voila. Your nervous system thanks you. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope that your head and your heart have something new to consider, something new to talk about, and something new to try. No husbands were harmed in the making of this podcast, and a big thank you to my husband for his help and original music composition. Love you, babe. This podcast was recorded on the traditional territories of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation and Tonquachan Council in Whitehorse, Yukon.
We acknowledge and are grateful to the original stewards of this land where we get to play, live, and raise our children. You can catch me on the Instagram at the Happy V Project for tips, tools, and anecdotes. And you can also join the weekly-ish newsletter for dispatches from my bedroom and my brain. Also, head to thehappyvaginaproject.com to learn more about how you can work with me. Catch you next time.